Hey everyone, welcome back. I never imagined my life would lead to what I'm about to share with you today. I'm just a regular guy, nothing special, no wild history. But sometimes life has a way of dragging you into the darkness when you least expect it. Before we get started, if you enjoy these stories, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned. Quick disclaimer, what you're about to hear is purely for entertainment. The events, characters, and theories in this video are fictional. Nothing is based on real events, but let's just say some stories hit a little too close to home. Now let's dive into today's tale of paranoia, digital ghosts, and the danger of going too far to find the truth. I was never the type of guy who believed in conspiracy theories or shadowy organizations lurking behind every corner. I lived a quiet life, had a decent job, a few close friends, and a small apartment. Nothing special, but it's funny how quickly the normal can turn into something that makes you question everything. It started, as these things often do, with small, almost imperceptible changes. I'd come home from work and feel like something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but little things were out of place. A picture frame slightly askew, a window I knew I hadn't opened cracked just an inch. I chalked it up to stress at first, or maybe I was just being forgetful. But then came the notes. The first one was tucked under my windshield wiper. Just 3 words written in a careful, neat hand. I'm watching you. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was a joke. Maybe one of my friends messing with me. But when I showed them the note, no one admitted to it, and the uneasy chuckles faded fast. And then more notes started appearing. They'd show up in random places, inside my coat pocket, in the mailbox. Once even slid under my apartment door. Each one was different, but the message was always the same. I'm watching you. That's when the paranoia really set in. I started checking my doors and windows obsessively, thinking I'd find someone creeping around outside. I even set up a security camera inside my apartment, but it never caught anything. It was like they knew where my blind spots were. That's when I started losing sleep. Every noise felt amplified, every creak in the floor, every gust of wind against the window. I could feel eyes on me, even though I couldn't see them. I went to the police, of course. I wasn't going to let this escalate without trying to do something about it. But when I handed over the notes, they treated it like a joke. Told me it was probably some neighborhood kids pulling pranks. I left the station with nothing but a shrug and a suggestion that I change my routine for a while. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. Whoever this was, they knew me. They knew my schedule, my habits. Moving wouldn't change a thing. That's when I did something I never thought I would. Something desperate. I started looking for help online, and not just any help. I'm talking about the dark web. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Who does that? But when you're scared, when you're cornered, you'll do anything to get your life back. It took a while navigating those eerie, hidden corners of the internet. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was terrified of clicking the wrong link or getting caught up in something even worse. But eventually I found someone. They called themselves Cypher. All I knew about them was that they could find anyone, track down digital footprints no one else could, and erase your problems, if you had enough money. I reached out, keeping my message vague, just enough to explain my situation. To my surprise, Cypher replied almost immediately. The message was short. I'll help you, but once I start, there's no turning back. I should have hesitated. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I agreed, sent over the payment, and waited. For days, I heard nothing. The notes had stopped too. The car that was usually parked outside my building disappeared. For the first time in months, I actually felt a little normal again. I thought maybe, just maybe, Cypher's reputation had scared off whoever was stalking me. But then late one night, I got the message. We're in deeper than I thought. My stomach dropped as I read it. Cypher sent another message right after that, and it was worse. Whoever this is, they know everything about you. Your family, your friends, your work, and now they know about me. I froze. How could this person know about Cypher? Cypher was supposed to be the best, the kind of person who could move through the digital world without leaving a trace. How had I gotten them involved in this? I tried to calm myself down, thinking it was some sort of scare tactic. But the next message proved I was wrong. They're coming for both of us. You need to leave. Now! I grabbed my things, just the essentials. I couldn't think straight, my mind racing. Where was I supposed to go? Who could I trust? Cypher told me to go dark, to stay off the grid, and so I did. I packed a bag and left my apartment without looking back. I didn't even tell my closest friends where I was going. I couldn't risk it. For the next few days, I holed up in a cheap motel out of town, constantly looking over my shoulder. I thought that by disappearing, I could finally catch a break. But then one night, I noticed something strange on my phone. An app I didn't remember downloading. Its icon was just a black square. I hesitated, but I couldn't stop myself. I tapped on it, and the screen flickered before showing me a grainy video feed. It was footage from outside my apartment building. The timestamp showed it was from that very night. The camera panned slowly, and I watched in horror as a figure appeared, creeping toward my front door. I shut the phone off and threw it across the room, my heart pounding. How had they gotten this footage, and how did they put it on my phone? Every fiber of my being screamed at me to get rid of it, but when I tried to delete the app, it just reappeared. The paranoia I thought I had left behind came rushing back tenfold. I was hundreds of miles away from home, and they still knew where I was. The next morning, I ditched my phone entirely. I figured I could avoid detection if I stayed offline. I found a remote cabin, way out in the middle of nowhere. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just me and the trees. For a while, it worked. I didn't hear anything, didn't see anything suspicious. It felt like I was finally in control again. But then, on the third night, I noticed something strange outside the cabin. At first, I thought it was just the wind, or maybe the reflection of the moon through the trees. But when I looked closer, I saw a small, flickering light deep in the woods. It was barely noticeable, but it was there, blinking in a slow, deliberate pattern, like someone was signaling me. I stayed up all night watching it, too scared to move, too scared to look away. By the time morning came, I was exhausted but determined to figure out what it was. I ventured out into the woods, flashlight in hand, determined to end this nightmare once and for all. But when I got to where I'd seen the light, there was nothing. No light, no sign that anyone had been there, just an empty clearing. That's when I noticed something half buried in the dirt, a small metallic object, about the size of a coin, with strange, intricate symbols etched into it. It looked ancient, almost like it didn't belong here. When I picked it up, a chill ran down my spine, as if touching it had triggered something. I hurried back to the cabin, trying to shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me. I stared at the object for hours, trying to make sense of the symbols, but nothing seemed to make sense. Then out of nowhere, a final message appeared on my new burner phone. It was from Cypher, but this time it wasn't a warning. They're not after you, they're testing you. Be careful. Testing me? What did that even mean? I didn't have time to process it before the burner phone died. Permanently. I couldn't turn it back on. I was officially off the grid, completely disconnected from everything. And yet I knew they were still watching me. A week later, I found myself at a small cafe in the nearest town, using their Wi-Fi to research the symbols on the object. After hours of searching, I found a site, one that didn't seem like it belonged on the regular web. It was dedicated to tracking paranormal symbols, secret organizations, and unexplained phenomena. There on one of the pages was the exact symbol on the object I had found. The description was vague, but it said the symbol was linked to an ancient group, a secret society that monitored individuals for reasons unknown. The people who encountered this symbol were never the same. They reported missing time, strange visitors, and the unsettling feeling that they were being watched, not by humans, but by something far more sinister. People marked by the symbol were never in immediate danger, but they were part of a larger plan, a plan they would never fully understand. Cypher's last message echoed in my mind. They're testing you. I realized then that this wasn't just about a stalker. It wasn't about someone messing with my life for fun. I had stumbled onto something far bigger, something far more dangerous than I could have imagined. And now I had a choice: keep running or figure out what they wanted from me. I thought after finding that strange object and researching the symbols, I had reached the peak of this nightmare, but that was only the beginning. What happened next made everything before it seem like a bad dream. This was real, more real than I ever wanted it to be. After that day in the cafe, I tried to go back to the cabin, to lay low and figure out my next move. But the moment I walked through the door, I felt it. Something was different. The air was heavy, tense, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I tried to shake off the feeling, but I couldn't. It was like I wasn't alone. I checked the locks. Everything was secure, just as I'd left it. I walked through the small space, scanning every corner, every shadow, and then I saw it. On the kitchen table where I had placed the strange object was something new, something that made my heart race and my stomach drop. It was a note written in the same neat handwriting as the ones I'd found before. But this time, the message was even more chilling. "Stop running." I stared at the note, my mind racing. How had they gotten in? I had been gone for hours and no one knew where I was. I checked the windows again, every door, but there was no sign of forced entry. It was as if someone had simply appeared, left the note, and vanished without a trace. I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. Whoever or whatever was after me, they were playing with me. They were always one step ahead, and now I was out of time. I grabbed the object, stuffed it into my bag, and bolted out of the cabin. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone standing in the doorway, watching me leave. But the cabin was still, silent. It felt like a trap I had barely escaped. I didn't know where to go. The paranoia was so thick I could hardly think straight. Every car that drove by, every person I passed on the street felt like they were in on it. I kept driving, aimless, until my phone buzzed. It was a new number, but something told me not to ignore it. I pulled over to check the message. It was from Cypher, or at least, I thought it was. The message was short, but it rattled me to my core. "You need to meet me, now." It was followed by an address. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, to disappear completely. But I couldn't. I needed answers. I needed to know who was behind this, why they were after me, and why I had been marked. The address led me to an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place that looked forgotten by time, like no one had set foot there in years. The windows were cracked, and the building was overgrown with weeds. I almost turned back, but something told me this was it. I was finally going to meet Cypher in person. I parked a few blocks away and approached on foot, keeping my head down. Every nerve in my body was on high alert. I reached the rusted door and gave it a push. It creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room inside. There was someone standing in the middle of the room. They were wearing a hood, their face obscured by shadows. I hesitated, but then they spoke, their voice low and distorted. "You're late." I stepped closer, trying to get a better look at their face. "Cypher?" I asked, my voice shaking. The figure nodded. "I told you once. There's no turning back. Now you've dragged us both into something much worse." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean? I just wanted to find out who was stalking me." Cypher let out a bitter laugh. "You think this is about some petty stalker? No, you were marked long before you came to me. This isn't about you. It's about what you've uncovered." They reached into their pocket and pulled out a small device, holding it out to me. "This is your way out, but you have to decide now. You can either run, disappear completely, or you can go deeper. But if you choose the latter, there's no coming back." I looked down at the device, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean by deeper? What's really going on here?" Cypher stepped closer, their face still hidden in shadow. "There's a group. Call them a secret society, an organization, whatever you want. They've been watching you because you've stumbled too close to their truth. The symbol you found, that was their mark. You're part of their game now. If you stay, they will hunt you. They will test you. And if you fail, there are no second chances." I could hardly breathe. My mind was spinning, trying to piece everything together. "Why me? I'm just a regular guy. I didn't ask for this." Cypher's voice softened, almost like they felt sorry for me. "You didn't ask for it, but you were chosen. Now you have to make a choice." I stared at the device in their hand, feeling the weight of the decision crushing me. Running might give me a chance at a normal life, but staying, going deeper, that would mean facing something I wasn't prepared for, something far beyond what I had ever imagined. But a part of me deep down needed to know the truth. I had to know why I had been marked, what this organization wanted from me, and what was really going on behind the scenes. "I'll stay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Cypher handed me the device, their fingers brushing mine for a brief second. "Good choice, but you need to be ready. Things are about to get much, much worse." Without another word, they turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving me alone in the empty warehouse. I looked down at the device in my hand, my heart racing. This was it. There was no turning back now. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the device in my hand. It was small, cold, and surprisingly heavy for its size, almost like it carried the weight of the choice I had just made. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to run as far as I could, but I knew it was too late for that. I had made my decision. Now I had to live with it. The room was silent, save for the distant creaks of the old warehouse settling in the night air. Cypher was gone, vanished into the shadows like a ghost. For a moment, I questioned if they had ever been there at all. Was I really ready for what came next? I had no idea, but there was no going back now. I left the warehouse and drove aimlessly, my mind racing. Everything felt surreal, like I had crossed into some strange, twisted version of reality. As I drove, the device in my pocket buzzed. I pulled over and took it out, my hands trembling. The screen flickered to life, showing a map with a single blinking dot. My next destination? The instructions were clear. If I wanted to know the truth, if I wanted to survive, I had to follow where it led. The map directed me to a remote location, far from the city, deep into the wilderness, a place so isolated that no one would ever find me if things went wrong. I drove for hours, my headlights slicing through the dense fog that blanketed the road. I knew that whatever was waiting for me at the end of this journey, it would change everything. The darkness ahead seemed endless, and with every passing mile, I felt myself being pulled deeper into a world I didn't understand. When I finally arrived, the place looked abandoned, an old decrepit building hidden deep in the woods. The air was thick with tension, and the silence around me was deafening. I hesitated at the door, knowing that once I crossed the threshold, there would be no turning back. I pushed the door open, and inside was nothing like what I expected. Instead of some sinister lair, it looked like an ordinary, albeit run-down room, but in the center was a single table with a note resting on it. My heart raced as I stepped closer and picked it up. The note had only one sentence: "Welcome to the fold." Suddenly, the device in my hand lit up again, this time showing a new message. "Your initiation begins now." I didn't understand. Initiation? Into what? My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't. Not after everything I had gone through. I had to see it through. The room grew darker, and I heard the faint hum of something mechanical powering up behind me. Before I could react, the walls flickered, and I realized what I was seeing wasn't real. It was all a setup, an elaborate illusion designed to test me, to push me to my limits. The truth Cypher had warned me about was just a glimpse of something far more terrifying. I had been pulled into something much larger than I ever imagined, and now I was part of it, whether I wanted to be or not. As the lights dimmed and my surroundings morphed into something I couldn't comprehend, I realized one thing. The people who had been watching me weren't just stalking me for sport. They had been preparing me, grooming me for something bigger. My phone buzzed one final time. "You're one of us now. There's no escape." The message was clear. My life as I knew it was over. I had been marked, tested, and now I had joined the very group I had feared for so long. The true horror wasn't just being hunted. It was knowing that I had become part of the machine, part of the Watchers, and now, like Cypher, I would be the one pulling the strings. I wish I could say this is where the story ends, but this is just the beginning. Now I live in the shadows, watching, waiting, just like they did. And if you're listening to this, maybe you've been marked too. Maybe you're next. So remember, Sometimes the answers we seek are more terrifying than the questions. Because once you find the truth, you might not like what you've uncovered. And when the Watchers choose you, there's no turning back. And that's the end of today's story, or at least the end for now. If you enjoyed this tale, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more unsettling stories. Stay safe out there and be careful what you search for. You never know who's watching or what's waiting in the shadows. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay vigilant.